Welcome to Hangover Airbrush, the channel that shows you the cheapo methods and the techniques to help everyone realize their full airbrush artistic potential. Today I'll be going over some airbrush basics, Airbrush 101 if you will. Some of the more seasoned artists may find this a little boring, so just think of it as a refresher. Now, first let's go over some nomenclature of the parts. This way everyone is on the same page when we talk about cleaning, maintenance, and airbrush types. Remember, these terms may vary a little bit depending on the manufacturer. However, I'll use terms that are pretty much widely accepted. For example, the airbrush shell. It's also acceptable to call that the airbrush body. So we'll start with the airbrush body. We have the air valve assembly right here at the bottom. And the air valve is controlled by the trigger's up and down movement to control whether or not the air is on or off. Next, we'll move to the tube shank or the spring guide. The spring, the needle tube or needle chucking guide. Now these three parts make up the back section, and the spring tension here directly reflects on the trigger pull. Also, some airbrushes have a removable back lever. Now the needle is held in place by the needle chuck nut. On the other end, the needle passes through the head packing or the head seal. This keeps the paint and the air separated. Now here we have the nozzle or tip, then the head or the head cap, then the nozzle cap, and on some airbrushes, the crown cap or needle cap. And to finish things off, there's a paint cup. I don't feel like you need an explanation for that. Now there's basically two types of airbrush, single action and double action. With a single action sprayer, you don't control the amount of paint sprayed with the trigger. Instead, it's controlled by setting the height on the fluid cap or by changing parts. Single action also comes in internal and external mix. Now with a double action airbrush, you can adjust paint flow on the fly just by pulling back further on a trigger. In both cases, air pressure is controlled by the regulator. The trigger is meant to be an on-off switch. Now cleaning. Cleaning is maybe the most critical aspect of airbrush maintenance. It stands to reason. If your airbrush isn't clean, it won't function like new. Now cleaning when you're done is different than what you might do in between colors. Now when I'm done painting for the day, I always take mine apart, clean the needle, the body, the head, and the nozzle. I use my fingernail to clean up any paint that is dried inside the paint cup, and if you decide to use glass cleaner, don't use the stuff with ammonia in it. I've heard that it can react with the brass in a very bad way. I like using Dawn dish soap and warm water for my end of day washout. Now every so often I'll take the back end of my airbrush apart and I'll check the condition and add a drop or two of oil to the spring guide assembly. And to finish everything off, a drop between the trigger and a back lever never hurt anything. Now the airbrush does and will come apart into many more pieces, but under normal circumstances, further disassembly is unnecessary. Gravity versus siphon. Alright, both have advantages. Gravity feed lets you run lower air pressures and thicker paints, while siphon feed rules over the color switching field. Which one you use depends on you. If you spend most of your time painting t-shirts and change colors all day long, siphon feed's probably for you. But if your paint stays until the bottle until you need it, you might benefit from a gravity fed. Ultimately, probably be like me and you'll end up with both. That pretty much sums up this episode of Airbrush 101, and I hope you enjoyed watching this. I hope you learned a little something.